Hi, this is Jim Macpherson at the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center, working today on something to talk about, STTA. Our topic today is movies, movies, movies. And we have a number of wonderful guests. We have TJ Faddis, who is here with extreme background in selecting and discussing movies for many, many years. We expect to have Charlie Poekel and Gabriel Morales here from BIMA any moment now, we think. They've been invited, and we had a feeling that they were going to attend. So welcome, TJ. And we also have Sheila, who tends to take roll for us. Thank you, Sheila. I'll begin as we always do with these with our sponsorship announcement and land acknowledgement. And this is what Reed has me read. Something to Talk About is sponsored by Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island. Fieldstone offers assisted and independent living along with a vibrant memory care community located on a tranquil Rolling Bay campus. Fieldstone also has day stay and respite care programs. You can call them at 206-594-1010, or you can email Ashley at ashleyc@fieldstonecommunities.com. And of course, a really good way to do this is just to check out their website, which is fieldstonecommunities.com. And also, they have it's a wonderful setting, and we hope that you will stop by for that sponsorship. Also, as we always do at the beginning of these programs, we like to do our land acknowledgement. We'd also like to acknowledge that we meet on the ancestral homeland of the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water. The Suquamish have lived on the water of the Salish Sea since time immemorial. We honor them and are learning from their stewardship of these lands and waters. And I see that Charlie Poekel has joined us. I think, and we may have Gabriel possibly. As I've talked to each of you in advance, I think this is an opportunity for us to introduce ourselves. I'll begin with me, and then I'll pass it to TJ, and then she can pass it to Charles. And I am working with Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center currently with Bob Agamalian. We select the movies, the second and fourth Friday night movies that we hold at the Senior Center. In fact, Bob and I are meeting this afternoon just after this to finalize the 4 that we've selected for July and August. I have enjoyed movies my whole life. We can talk about what your favorite movie is if you want to at some point in this presentation. So that's my story. So TJ, tell us a little bit about who you are and your involvement with movies.
Well, I ran the Linwood Theater from 1984 to 2011, taking hiatuses from time to time. I programmed the Linwood Theater once we became an art house theater with independent film, foreign film, and documentaries and local filmmakers. And then I went to BIMA, Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, and they tapped me to do their guest curatorial services for their smart film programs. Those are Tuesday nights, but our smart films are on summer hiatus right now. And lastly, I'm on the selection committee for the International Manhattan Shorts Film Festival, which will be showing at BIMA on the last weekend of September. And so there are 10 short films from around the world, and you get to vote for your favorite one. And almost 24 have been nominated by the Oscar selection committee. And I think we have 3 or 4 that actually won the Oscar for short.
Wow, that's a terrific background, and we're glad that you're here to tell us all about movies. Charles, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how you're involved in movies and why you're here.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Hi everybody. Hey TJ, good to see you.
Charles.
Um, yeah, I'm Charlie Poekel. I'm currently the chair of film over at Cornish College of the Arts. So I teach filmmaking over there. I'm a filmmaker myself. And last year I launched the Bainbridge Island Film Festival here on the island. And I've started programming films around the island, some at Linwood Theater, some at BEMA, and kind of around different places. And I'm gearing up for the second annual film festival in November. And yeah, submissions are open right now, and that's where we're at. And we're obviously working with Beam on this Pride program. And Gabriel, who is not here, it's because it's good news. He's actually getting his green card today, so that ran a little bit late. So he might join us if he's the person who kind of spearheaded this BEMA program with us.
So the way I'd like to kind of do this discussion today is let's spend at least about 10, 15, 20 minutes between the two of you and perhaps me, and then we'll get a question from Sheila, hopefully before she leaves. If she wants to discuss something, Sheila has to leave it too. And I see that Marcy is here and anybody else that wants to ask questions. I thought a good way to start this, and I mentioned it in an email, so I'd hoped you kind of thought about it, is that each of you are highly experienced in selecting movies to be shown to particular audiences and grading and organizing movies. Could you give us some thoughts about the process that you go through in order to come up, for a particular audience, or any way that you want to discuss how you select movies? Let's start with TJ. Tell us about this interesting process.
Well, Jim, any movie that has touched my heart or my soul or my brain or my funny bone and is something that I like to put on the list. And every once in a while, there are those movies that crop up that you just want to share with everybody you know, right? Because it's been so wonderful and so well made. And that's basically how I program my films. At BEMA, they tend to like to package their films under a theme, which at first I thought was constricting, but now I'm coming to embrace it since there are only, what, 89,000 films out there. It's kind of nice to narrow it down a bit. So yeah, that's how I tend to program. It's not.
But what about the audience, though? Does it matter who you're programming for?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, ever since we came out of COVID, especially at the beginning, once we were coming out of COVID, we're sort of popping our heads above ground after a long winter. And so I wanted to treat my audience very gently and wasn't interested in showing political films or um, any heavy message films. I just, it's sort of like a spring flower that comes up. You tread gently around it. And so that's how I programmed after COVID. And I go more for the films that are about the heart and soul, um, as opposed to wanting to bring down the man or solve the Middle East crisis problem. Although, if we could do that, we probably would have by now with movies. Um, but so I tend to treat the audience more gently these days, and myself as well. I don't know why, but I'm not a big fan of violence. Never was, but I'm even more sensitive at this age to it.
Okay, well, let's pass it over to Charles for a little bit here, and you, of course, background both making movies and selecting movies, and wide variety of background. I'm sure you have to put on several hats when you do this. So, how about giving us some feedback on that?
Yeah, it helps that's kind of where I started in exhibition, is from a filmmaker perspective, because I'd had films play at festivals and play at different theaters, and I knew what it was that attracted films and filmmakers to play different places. And I thought that Bainbridge Island was a wonderful place with a lot of wonderful resources that would welcome filmmakers. So for me, to go back to your original question, I think a lot of it is thinking about where certain films have already played and like where they kind of where their story fits into the kind of greater picture of films that are being released. I'm looking at films. I think TJ, you program a lot of at this point. You're getting a lot of films. You're looking at like films all over the kind of the chronology of history of film, right? Right. So like with the film festival, I'm mainly looking at contemporary new releases that have yet to play at film festival or have started playing film festivals, but have not yet been fully released digitally and maybe not even so in theaters. So it's kind of a very specific window I'm looking at into the lifespan of a film. So that helps me narrow it down from the 89,000 or whatever so I that is what I start with, and then it's kind of looking at where might those films have already played, what was at SIFF, what has gotten attention, what needs attention, and then what do I think the island would kind of wrap their arms around and welcome, kind of knowing the
How do you
identity of the community. Yeah.
how do you react to TJ's comments about the timing of the films and whether they have a particular message? I mean, how do you decide if you get 50 films and you can only pick 6? What goes through your mind on how you're going to make that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what makes it a little easier for me is I'm trying to pick things for everybody. So I'm okay if you might only like a third of the films. Like you're not going to see the entirety of the festival, right? So you can still see 10 films that fit your liking. So that allows me to explore places that I might not necessarily gravitate towards myself, that my other programmers feel pretty strongly about. And then I'm always surprised by how well those films play, right? And I'm always kind of reminded that every audience, every person is different. Everyone's experience with the film is different, right? And if we can, honor that uh, as many people those kind of experiences as possible, then yeah, we're doing a good job.
Well, since we have you on the box there, Charles, why don't you tell us about the BIMA right now? I mean, isn't there something coming up within the next 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, we've got a kind of a little mini program of films playing on Friday, June 14th and Friday, June 15th for Pride Month over there. So we've got 2 feature films and 2 short films, all that kind of look at or deal with kind of queerness in a different variety of different ways.
And how did you get those films? I mean, these are things that have already been out, right? Or are these like things that nobody's seen?
No, these are films that have started playing festivals but have not been released yet. So we have 2 films that premiered at Berlin Film Festival last year that have not been released here in the States yet, or actually one just got released via the Criterion channel, the digital streaming platform. And then we have 2 short films, one that started playing last year and another that only just premiered at South by Southwest in March and won, I believe, an audience award there. So yeah, all pretty new, all within the last year or so.
Now, do you send out a net? I mean, do you ask or do people come to you? It seems to me that a lot of filmmakers, and you are one, they want to be seen, and so they find out all these things that are going on, and they get their films out there. Why don't you give us some insights of feelings about that, since you're deeply involved in that? How does that work?
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, everybody comes to you, right? Like if you're a Sundance, you don't have to really do much soliciting of anyone. Everyone kind of knows they want to bring their films to you. But this is, last year was our first year, so we did have open submissions, and we got, I think, about 200 cold submissions,
Wow.
which was great, but wasn't a ton of material, like great material, right? Material that I thought was worthy of people's $15 and 2 hours of their time, right? Not everything is. And so last year, for instance, pretty much all our features were things that I kind of had an eye on in other festivals and kind of pulled out of there and solicited myself. Ideally, it's something where you're maybe half and half, but in these early years, I anticipate a lot of kind of, which is what we did with this BIMA program. Gabriel and I had heard about different films that had been playing the festival and different festivals and sought them out.
Let's shift gears just a smidge here and go back to TJ on something that crossed my mind. since you were involved at Linwood Theater for such a long time, you've seen the change in the theater structure and in the conglomerations taking over a lot of and losing our independent theaters around the country. Uh, I mean, how do you uh, are films forced upon you when you're running a theater like that, or can you literally go out and do a little bit of this? We want to get something special for Bainbridge. Can you give us any insight about either how things have changed over time or your accolades or frustrations with the theater business when you're running that kind of business?
Wow. There's the biggest frustration is trying to get your hands on a film in a timely fashion. And they platform these things out. Um, and you basically have to wait your turn. And that was frustrating to me. And the other thing now, what with digital projectors, DCP, they are most of the time they're leased by the theater, and everything you show on that projector is recorded as to what you showed and when, right? And you don't get chance to show a film one more time, right? You only show it during those show times, um, so that if you wanted to preview it for yourself to get, make film notes or something, you don't have that option. Um, and so it's a little more limited nowadays, what with DCPs. Um, but yeah, I think those would be. But what I love about it is that would have opportunity to many times to preview a film over in Seattle before I brought it in, so I knew exactly what I would be showing, um, and what the film entailed. We also had an agent, a booking agent, and Bruce and John would see those films that I couldn't get to, and they would always have their opinion as to, you know, what would be a good film for our audience.
Good. That's excellent. I've got another area that I thought maybe Charlie could give us some input on. And by the way, Sheila, if you want to raise your hand, if you have any questions, just let me know and we'll get you shoehorned in here. I think I heard from your introduction, Charlie, that you teach, you film, you make film yourself, and you curate others' films. So you're deeply involved in many aspects of film. Uh, could you give us a sense of either whichever you pick, meaning as a teacher, are you seeing the students getting involved? Is digital making a huge impact here, as TJ is suggesting, that kids with their cell phones out there taking films and trying to turn them into features? And filmmaking itself must have changed quite a bit. I hate to say it, but you're the youngest looking face in the boxes here. We remember, the celluloid, and we remember black and white TVs. And you're, in an era now where you have a lot more flexibility. Why don't you kind of give us some insight about your personal involvement and thoughts about film and how it's been changing in your mind?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I kind of began in the digital tape era, which was attractive for the same reasons that I think cell phones are to kids, and that I knew I could hook it up to my computer with a digital cord and digitize that footage. So it was kind of that transition from completely analog to now with this kind of instantaneous digital. But yeah, it's fantastic for, I mean, my students and anyone who, yeah, the accessibility to the tools is just kind of incredible now. Um, yeah, I mean, there's parts of me that get a little bit worried about like what is AI is doing, for instance, with as far as like creating animation, music, and kind of cutting corners in an otherwise pretty meticulous medium. But I think those things are going to get kind of worked out. I think audiences are relatively smart and care about quality, and they want real Julia Roberts, not fake Julia Roberts. You know, maybe not Julia Roberts now, but they want real Taylor Swift, not fake Taylor Swift. So, um, Yeah, and the cheap cameras are really kind of fantastic for students, and so it's really exciting for them. They don't have as many opportunities like they used to. There aren't as many kind of traditional pathways of like, I'm going to become this, right? I'm going to become an independent filmmaker, or this or that. But it's really just learning what that tool, how to use all the tools, and then finding a lifestyle or like a career that where they can apply those. Um, yeah, hope that answers your question or not.
Can I
Well, yeah.
can I make a
Go
comment?
ahead. Sure, TJ.
Charles, in our Manhattan short, we too are going through submissions, and we have a 19-year-old young man who made, I think, a 12 or 13-minute short that totally on his cell phone. When he's not the first to do that. I mean, I remember the first feature-length film that was shot entirely on his cell phone, right? But but the fact that this young man is 19 and he sent us a film that I'm really pushing for us to show. Um, and it's a little surprising coming from me because it would classify in the horror genre, which is absolutely not my favorite. But his social message in this is so beautiful, so powerful. So and so yeah, like I said, this he's 19. I can't wait to see what he's gonna do the next 10 years with some maybe real equipment someday.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I guess I'll riff a little bit on what Charlie told us, because it's similar in my mind to the music industry when there used to be records and CDs and DVDs and so forth, and now we have the YouTube channel. We have people creating film. Millions of people around the world are making their own 12-minute films, like you saw, that were impressive. Is it going to be a viable pathway to employment, or is it going to become a hobby and people are just going to end up just doing it? I mean, how are you encouraging your students, for example, Charlie, to uh, go through this morass of availability?
Yeah, it's a good question. The interesting thing about short films is they've kind of never been, there's really never been a viable path for any sort of career with short films. You make them as people like to say a calling card, or you make them maybe try and get a feature made or get your name out there or increase funding or something for something else. There's not like any distribution for short films beyond film festivals, nor really ever has there been, which doesn't stop people from making them. And so I agree that YouTube is really nothing but short films now. Um, but what I love about that, though, is something like Manhattan Shorts or the Bainbridge Film Festival. It's even that more so important because really that's the only time some of these short films are going to be on the big screen, because the YouTube screen is just not never going to be that big. So it is an opportunity to really kind of put a stamp on a piece of work, and elevate it beyond that of just this giant swamp of collection that is YouTube.
And it's also nice because how many filmmakers, almost every filmmaker started off by making a short, right? Even George Lucas, right? And so the fact that the Bainbridge Island Film Festival and film festivals around the place give these guys a chance to show their work, they may be the next George Lucas.
And I remember every year I used to go to, I think it was the Guild or the Guild 2 in Seattle, and they would play the Academy Award shorts. They had it every year. They would show all the nominees, and I loved that every single year I went to those. And I don't see that nearly enough. And I was kind of hoping that at some point the traditional theaters might, way back when they used to have shorts before the movie. I mean, they were like things that involved a really long time ago in black and white. They would have the newsreels and things like that. I think it would be fun if some of the more independent local theaters could put in a 5 to 8 minute short that was created by a college kid from their hometown. And in fact, we just had, well, I'm sure you two know about it. I went to the movie that was made by that woman that lived on Bainbridge, and she created that beautiful movie. What was the name of that? Sheila, you saw it. Does
Charles, it was
anybody
in
remember that?
last year's film festival, Charles. Rachel.
Ingress,
Yeah.
Rachel
Yes.
Noel
Yeah.
James and Ingress.
Ingress, yes, that
Yeah.
was a really cool movie too. I really liked it. I thought in the transition to show the difference, and I think she was very clever in both the style of it and the. But see, there's an example of somebody who literally obtained power by being in film, and then could create, I guess, enough of an income or backing or something to get her film shown here in her hometown. So I'm kind of hoping that we can use that as a way of keeping film, not just the big, Marvel kind of stuff that they put hundreds of millions of dollars into, and that's all we ever get to see. So I'm hoping that you two can give us some encouragement that that there are people in the business who will think of film more than just a money making thing. I mean, that's what I hope. Sheila, we're getting close to the time. Do you have any questions you want to ask, or you're just going to listen in?
I'm listening and enjoying this thoroughly. It's bringing me back to my Sundance years. So yeah, it's fun. I remember one of the things we always did was be sure to put aside one evening to go and see all the shorts, and at the hotel there, and it was great. It brings back good memories.
So with that in mind, I don't ask the two of you or any other area you would like to discuss, but if you can kind of give us a personal background about why movies, how they became important to you, and if you have a favorite movie or two, or something, how movies made a difference in your life, that would be wonderful to hear. How about you, TJ? A little bit of a sneeze there.
Excuse me. Yeah. Oh, wow. Remember when movies were on television, like Dialing for Dollars, and every night there'd be one of the stations would show a feature-length film. Remember that back in the day, Jim, Sheila? I know you do.
Yeah.
And it would be a way that my mother and I would bond. Mom had 4 kids, and so she was busy, and it was just, I would sneak out at when I'd hear the music start, and I would sit in the living room behind a chair and watch this movie that she was watching until one day, watching Wait Until Dark, I screamed when the bad guy leaped out at Audrey Hepburn and upset
Yes.
the dog, who leaped off of Mom's lap and upset her puzzle table and knocked over the lamp. And so then I was discovered. But after that, she allowed me to sit like a grown up in the room with her and watch the movie with her. So that was a real bonding experience. And then when I came to Bainbridge in 1978, there were 2 women who talked with oh God, the couple that ran the Linwood before Sam Granado bought it, the Noltas, talked with Glenn Nolta and asked if they could rent the movie theater on the 2 nights that he didn't show film. And they showed Wonder of Wonders, foreign films. And I saw my first 3 foreign films at the Linwood Theater thanks to these 2 women. I saw La Cage aux Folles. I saw Swept Away by Lena Wertmuller. And I saw a Fellini movie. I think it was Satyricon.
Whoa.
And there, my
Yikes.
life just opened up.
Yeah, and I came to Bainbridge in 1978 too, so I remember when they had that. Do you remember they had that leak in the ceiling once for a while that they had to keep it blocked off some seats, seemed like for a whole year. The money was tight. How about you, Charlie? Any thoughts about how you got into films, or any early thoughts, memories of how it, obviously it's become a huge part of your life. So maybe you give us some insight on that.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I started off wanting to be a filmmaker, and I still want to be a filmmaker. But I guess at some point it became, there's a famous Orson Welles quote that he used to spend 95% of his time trying to make movies and 5% of his time only making them. And it's true, even if you're Orson Welles, right? So I kind of quickly learned as a filmmaker that you need to find other things that are going to fill your time and pay your rent. And I found that teaching and programming were ways that kind of addressed the same, I think, primal connection I had to wanting to make films, which is to connect people with powerful stories, right? So even if I can't be making them, I can still make that connection for people, or I can teach people how to make them to make that connection, right? Because I do believe that that kind of connection is extremely powerful, and we can, through empathy and looking at people's lives, can just learn so much about human beings and this planet and the relationships of people and stuff. So yeah, cinema forever for me. Yeah, TJ as well.
Okay, you take it off, Sheila?
Yeah, I do, but I wanted to say something before I went. If my voice will hold up for it anyway. Yeah, and because I want to answer this question as to when was it that it hit me that the film was going to be a big part of my life, which it is, because I go to the movies at least once a week and I love it, love it, love it. But I remember my brother, who is 10 years older than me, would take me to the movies. And the first one he took me to was Quo Vadis. And I guess
Whoa.
I
Wow.
brought home, I came home, and I remember sitting in the living room and my mother and father and Ian, my brother, sitting around listening to me tell what the story was about. Now I would have been about 8 or 9, 7, maybe 7, maybe probably 7. And apparently everybody was in absolute convictions of laughter because of the way I was telling the story about the fire. I don't know. All I remember is everybody was laughing their tail off because of the way I was giving the story. The other one that I remember early that Ian took me to was yeah, sure. Okay, Sheila, how can you forget? The one with James Arness, the horror film.
Oh, right, the science fiction film.
Yeah, science fiction, yeah.
Right.
Oh, Sheila. The about the guy up in the that uncovered from the ice.
Mhm.
And it was
I don't
James
remember the name.
Way Out There. That's how it was later. Anyway, James Arness was in it. And it was scary as all get out. Anyway, there's a part in there where his hand comes out from behind the door. I've seen the movie since, and it is that. It is true. It comes out, and apparently I lost it and ended up under the seat in the movie theater. And my brother said he would never take me to the movies again. I embarrassed him so badly. Anyway, those are the 2 movies I remember as a kid seeing. And maybe mostly because he took me. I adored my brother. But, it just, I wish I could remember. That's ridiculous. Just as soon as I get off of here, I'm going to remember it. But anyway, great movie, wonderful movie. James, and the interesting thing about that is the fellow who wrote the story, short story, James Campbell, Joseph Campbell, was not Joseph Campbell. Yeah, different Joseph Campbell is the uncle or the father of my sister-in-law. And so I got to know him really pretty well. Strange man, very strange. What can I say?
Well, since we're telling memories here, I'll chime in and say that if people ask you what's your favorite movie, I frequently will say Fantasia. And the reason is that I saw that as a child in the theater, and it was an amazing experience for me because if you know the story, of course, it's a lot of little stories. They're all linked together. It's just Disney showing off. And I still remember when the mountain opened up and the bat wings of the devilish character and all these things came out of him like like a lava from a volcano. It was a huge experience for me. And having an experience in the movie that sticks with you. There's another odd one, I guess I've also told people about, is that I'll never forget. I was at the Guild 2. I was an adult. It was probably in the 80s at some point. I saw the movie Koyana Squatsi, and I saw that movie. I really don't know why I went, or what drew me to it, but I had no idea what I was going to experience when I was there. And it made such an impact on me that I bought it, and I still have it. And I play that movie probably once a year. And to me, it's an example of using sound, using editing, using film to give you feelings. It's absolutely, there's no diet. Well, it's Koyana Squatsi, the chant. That's all that's in it at the beginning and at the end. But when you have these experiences at a movie that stick with you, I think that to me is the magic of movie making. And I have a list. I own just under 400 movies physically. Half of them are actual produced DVDs. The other half are things that I took off the commercial free off of places like Cinemax and HBO and stuff like that. And when for example, I didn't tell you how I select movies, and I should do that now. Bob's not here, but when it's time for Bob and I to select movies for the senior center, frequently I'll go back and I'll read through the 400 movies that I have to just kind of get my feelings going, and to remember those movies. Oh, why did I pick that one? I just bought 3 movies last weekend, 2 weekends ago. I have to be out of town, and the 3 you'll be interested. The 3 I bought. One was When Harry Met Sally. I mean, I don't own it, but it's a Seattle movie, and people talk about it all the time. And there was, like a $1.50. I mean, it was one of those thrift stores. And another one was The Second True Grit, which I remember when I saw it, I was surprised at how much I liked it. Because the John Wayne, we're the older people here remember that he was the one with the patch on his eye and the guns, and and who can top that? But when Jeff Bridges did it, he really did top it. I thought he did a fabulous job. I love that movie, and I don't own it, and it was cheap. And the other one I bought was American Beauty, and that was a semi-controversial choice as the best picture of the year, but it's an impactful kind of movie. So I go through these lists, and I was kind of hinting at it in my questioning. Bob and I have to look at our audience. I mean, we're literally talking about 10 to 20 older people, most of them females, frankly, right, Sheila?
Yeah, I've got to go by. I'm sorry, Jim, I'm interrupting. The movie was called The Thing.
Oh,
The Thing.
Geez, no.
Of course.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Think about me at the ball game. Bye.
Go Mariners. Yeah. Yeah, Sheila works at the ballpark. So anyway, just to finish the thought there, I go through the list, and since he's not on here with me, Bob he'll never listen to this, but I think he realizes that when you look at the movies that we pick for the senior center, I tend to pick movies that are older movies that are 10 to 15 years old, that even if you've seen them before, you'll want to see them again. That's my thought. Or things that people have not seen that I thought were great, like Tampopo is one that I played, that I love that movie. I own it. I try to show it to as many people as I can. But we have this older audience, and we don't play horror movies, TJ. I mean, we're not, that's not our audience, But Bob will pick things that are more new. He'll look at like the Academy Award winners and nominees for the last 3 or 4 years, and pick those. And I tend to pick older movies that I really like, that either are more obscure or that people would be willing to see again. And maybe I'll use that as a segue to say, are there movies that you've seen many times that you keep going back to? How about you, TJ? Anything you can think of? And then we'll see if Charlie has some thoughts.
Oh, mercy. Yeah, I've got those touchstone films that I liked. It's sort of like seeing an old friend again, right? That you want to pop this in. And it's like, oh, geez, I wonder what the Big Lebowski's doing this time around, right? And he's doing the
Good,
same
good example.
thing.
A great example.
um, and one I just showed here in our last series, smart film series at BEMA. Our series was called Stranded Souls, and these are movies about uh, uh, thoughts on the afterlife, right? And Cora Eda's Afterlife was definitely one of our suggestions too, Charles. Um, and I showed I started the series with a little film called Into the West with Gabriel Byrne. It's an Irish film. It is one of those movies that the studios marketed as a kids movie, um, but it isn't. It's a grown up movie just as well, if not more so. And I think I managed to physically yank in 13 people that week to come and see this film. And every single one said, I don't want to see a kids movie. And I dragged them in anyway. But most people wouldn't. So I showed it to my BEMA audience, and we had an audience of about, oh gosh, 50 people. 3 times as many who saw it when it was at the Linwood for a week. And they just loved it too. It was just so soulful and so charming. And it's called Into the West. So yes, I do have touchstone movies. The Ghost in Mrs. Muir, you know, just such a lovely, heartfelt movie. And Rex Harrison has never been at his most bombastic and handsome and commanding as the captain.
How about you, Charles?
Yeah, man, yeah. Where to start? One I always frequently cite is Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation with Gene Hackman. Is a film that I just seem to always find something new every time I watch it and pull something out of. And technically speaking, it's a film I cite a lot with students because there's just so much to kind of pick up to learn from it, about making movies and about kind of the ways different elements are interacting and functioning, stuff like that. More contemporary, there's a film with John C. Reilly called Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story that I think is absolutely hilarious. John C. Reilly is it's a spoof on like all kind of music biopics, kind of all in one. And I just think it just consistently makes me laugh, kind of one joke after another. And yeah, going one film I played last year in the festival, which I just never tire of, is Buster Keaton's Sherlock Jr., which is one that I feel like I could kind of close my eyes and just replay it in my mind, like if I lay on my pillow in a great way. And yeah, I'll stop with those.
I loved
Yeah,
the cameraman,
Oh yeah, cameraman's
the
fantastic.
monkey.
Oh yeah,
well, I'll tell
monkey.
you, one of the movies I have picked for the four that we're picking is Wings of Desire. And the reason that I picked it was that we have one of our attendees, regular attendees, she's German, Karen, and that made me think of the movie. It's in German, and I had just shown an Italian movie. It's escaping me at the moment, but and we show look, we do everything with closed caption anyway because they're older people, and every movie we do is closed caption, so we're always reading what's up there. So it doesn't matter if it's French or Italian or German, but as soon as I thought of it, I remembered how impressed I was with the movie. And that's the way I do it. Oh, Wings of Desire. I know it's black and white. I know it's in German. I know it's very moody. I know that they're angels, and there's this thing between humanity and eternity. That's something I think I might. And then I went back and read more about it, and I said, oh yeah, now I know. And I think any of you two particularly have seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of movies. They're in there somewhere. And if you have a little key that opens them up, you'll remember parts of it. But I challenge you to if there are ones where you say, oh, what's the first thing you do? I like that one. There's something about that one that I liked it. There's something about it. And that's the kind of excitement that I think I'm hoping continues with your students, Charles, and with the people you're showing movies to, TJ, that you show them that they can make a difference. They really can make a difference. People have seminal moments either on their couch or in a movie theater. I hope more of it happens in the movie theater because I think there's something to be said with the collective experience. But I will admit that I go to Linwood and to the pavilion on the off week in the afternoon, and I saw a movie at the pavilion of 2 weeks ago where I was the only one in the theater. And I like that. I do, I gotta admit it, it's kind of fun to have a movie, and I've done it at Linwood a bunch. And at least the film doesn't burn up anymore. I will tell you one quick story since we have a few more minutes. Linwood Theater story. It had to be 30 years ago because my son, who is now 30, was an infant at the time, and we went to the theater to see The Crying Game. And we took it. You were probably there at the
I
time.
think I was showing it. Yes, I remember that.
This is what happened. This is what happened. We went to the theater to see The Crying Game, and Mikey was in his little carrier, and he was really cool. He was great. And we got past the seminal scene, the shocking scene, and the film got all bubbly on the screen, and it burned up. And the lights finally came on, and they said, I'm sorry, but the film has burned up, and we can't, we'll give you a ticket. You can come back and we'll fix it and whatever. And so the reason it was so interesting compared to digital now is that we knew how far into the movie we had seen.
Mhm.
And so we brought Mikey back like the day or two later, of an hour into the movie, an hour and a half into it, and we walked in and just saw the end of it.
I just saw the end of it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. What I love when there's something really magical when the film starts to burn, right? Is the emotion kind of bubbles, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's like poof, and it's all gone. It's like, whoa, that was
Well,
so cool. And
yeah,
I'd be and I could be standing at the curtain. It happened at the end of Rocky Horror one time on my shift, and it just kind of bubbled and went whoop, and I went, oh, that's a cool effect. And I'm standing there and went, oh wait.
it's not so cool though. Last Friday I showed at the senior center Cinema Paradiso. And that's one of those movies that I said, these people have to see this movie. They have to see it. If you love movies, this is a movie you need to see. And of course, and I had forgotten a lot about it, but I knew it was one that I really, really loved. And of course, the scene of the fire, if the plate burns up, it burns up because of the film. And the projectionist becomes blind, and the boy has to take over. And there's a lottery winner that just happened to happen in their town, and he rebuilds the theater. And the theater becomes the center of their community. And then, of course, everything changes, and then they, at the end of it, they tear the theater down. But that's another example of when I'm thinking of movies for the senior center, I don't want to challenge them. Well, I hope not too many of them are listening, but I don't want to challenge them too much with things that might be upsetting. There's a recent movie, maybe you two can even help me with it, that I didn't see, that was an Academy Award nominee this past year, involving the German family that lived right next to the Holocaust. And I've been told it's a beautiful movie, but it's a very difficult subject. And I'm resonating on your comments early on today, TJ, about the springtime after COVID of being gentler on your audiences, we kind of try to do that anyway with the senior center people. because they're out there getting free popcorn and watching a movie in one room with 20 of us. It's a lot of fun. And I don't want to make it an upsetting experience, although we have done some challenging things, I will admit. So can you give us a sense, Charlie, of the kind of movies that you personally do, and what are your efforts to get producers, to do something even bigger? I mean, is that one of the things that you're hoping you can do?
Yeah, do you ask as far as making films goes?
Yeah, as a
Yeah,
filmmaker.
yeah. I mean, getting good producers is probably the hardest and most important piece of making a film. Um, and I had a script. Till COVID, I'd spent about 3 years trying to get off the ground with producers that we'd only just cast right as COVID began. Cast our second lead in March. But the reason it took so long to get to that point was, yeah, from a producing standpoint. So I think that is one of the hardest pieces. There's so much great material out there, good scripts, good stories, and there's great talented directors. There's lots of talented people, right? And the thing with producers is, as soon as you've shown you can do a great job, kind of almost immediately promoted to better work. So you don't really hang around in the once you've made a $500,000 movie and it's done really well, like if you made Moonlight or something, right? And then you don't have to make another Moonlight, right? You're now making more expensive stuff, right? So in many ways, if you're stuck at a small budget as a producer, I don't want to say it says something negative about you, but I think everybody wants to work up a bigger scale, right? Yeah, so I'd say that's probably the hardest part, is finding good producers who understand what you're trying to do and can, but also know how to make it happen.
Yeah, but I guess I've heard the stories about the massively talented producers and directors who then want to make that small film that they always wanted to make. And maybe The Fabelmans was that in a way, although it turned out to be a big film, clearly, obviously, for him. But I guess what I'm hearing, and I don't mean it rudely, Charles, but it'd be nice if you were in that position. If you could say, yeah, I can make a $200 million movie, or else I could just kind of make one that's 30 or 40 million, a smaller movie, or 10 million, and put out something I'm really proud of. But that's the kind of flexibility that only a very tiny percentage of people ever reach, right?
It's actually happening as it used to, in that most Hollywood isn't making a lot of those movies anymore, and a lot of the work that's being made in production is happening on the streaming side, right? Episodic shows and things kind of have taken over a significant portion of creative resources in the industry. Right? So I don't know what the breakdown is, but I'd say traditional Hollywood released films probably constitute the smallest portion ever of kind of the people who are working in that kind of entire creative industry. So lots of, like, the hardest writing jobs to get are on TV shows, right? I mean, that's where everybody wants to be as a writer. People want to be showrunners and things like that. It's less that I want to be the old kind of. First, it was the director, and then it was the writer director in the kind of 70s to 90s. Now, I think people kind of just work in television. It's hard to even call it television. And yeah.
Well, and that touches on something else that I had good friends here, Ann and Marion Reese, if you knew, on Bainbridge here. They created Hallmark movies, a number of Hallmark movies, and became very famous for doing that, TV movies. And frankly, I suspect, because they were older women, and when I knew them, and Marion is gone now, they were kept out of the business. They had a lot of talent and could have done a bigger film back in the 70s and 60s, 70s, 80s, and were held back and were relegated to TV, although they were movies, they were full, they were, but I guess there's just a conglomeration of media now that it all kind of bleeds around. You were going to make a comment, TJ. I'm sorry. I think I interrupted you. I thought I sensed that you had a comment that you wanted to make.
Oh, I did, but I'm sorry. It's gone with the wind.
That was my fault. Okay, well, we're running out of time. We have about 5 more minutes here, 6 minutes. Let's get some final thoughts that either one of you want to make, and particularly you, Charlie, I'll start with you because you have a series coming up and it might be a good time to mention it again for those that will watch this in the future. And then any final thoughts you have for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I might as well mention the films real quick. So we have two feature films. We have Orlando, My Political Biography, which is kind of like a hybrid fiction documentary film that explores kind of the relationship that trans identifying people have had with Virginia Woolf's Orlando biography. And yeah, it's a really kind of powerful film. It's French, UK. It premiered at Berlin last year. It's preceded by a short film called How to Carry Water. And How to Carry Water is a 15-minute. It's billed as a punk rock fairy tale. It's a portrait of a fat, clear, disabled photographer around a vast network of freshwater springs. So it opens with a kind of beautiful couple minutes of the bodies swimming in these kind of freshwater springs and stuff. It's really kind of and then our other feature film is All the Colors of the World Are Between Black and White, directed by Babatunde Akolo, which is a Nigerian film that also premiered at Berlin last year, and it's about kind of the budding love between two men in Lagos, Nigeria, in a place where sexuality is out. And then that is preceded by a short film called If I Die in America, which is about a man grieving his Muslim boyfriend's death in America, and dealing with the family of his dead husband, who needs the body sent back to Kuwait right away. So, that's the one sorry, sentence. So each of those short films are about 15 minutes, followed by.
Okay. That's excellent. And I guess I'll just put in a plug for the movie Orlando, which is one in my mind that I really liked. If you haven't seen that movie, it's really something. So TJ, some final thoughts. We only got about 3 minutes here.
Sure.
And then I'll sign off.
I want to recommend the Manhattan Shorts that are going to be playing at the last weekend of September at the Bainbridge Island Museum of Art. 10 short films from around the world that are provocative. I mean, in that they make you think and or feel or laugh. And I think what I love most about movies is how a really good film kind of works itself in and opens you up and makes you aware of how interconnected we all are, whether it's with nature or with each other, because we're connected to both. And a good movie reminds you of that.
Excellent. Well, let's all keep those comments in mind. A couple of upcoming movies at BIMA, both actually, I guess, at BIMA, which is doing a great job. Thank you to TJ. Thank you to Charles. And we'll just leave it with go to the movies, right?
Thank you, Jim.
Yay.
Go to the movies.